This is the Biological Resources Information Program for the Lower Laguna Creek Open Space Preserve Trail Project, brought to you by Alluvian Biological Consulting. This training has 4 broad objectives. Hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll be familiar with all 4 of these points. First, we're going to cover the definition and implications of take, and then we'll move on to what your responsibilities are if you encounter a regulated species. We'll have a brief introduction to the protected species associated with this project, and then we'll go over some general mitigation measures that need to be followed in order to prevent any incidents of take. So let's talk a little bit about take. Take is a very broadly defined term. California has a different definition for it than the federal government does, but they're both very similar. So for the federal definition, take means to harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, trap, capture, collect, or attempt to engage in any such conduct. California's definition is to hunt, pursue, catch, capture, or kill, or attempt to do any such actions. They're very, very similar, and they both mean pretty much the same thing. Anything that constitutes harassment or more is going to qualify as take. And the reason that it's important for you to know what take is because take of listed or regulated species can carry some pretty hefty penalties. Criminal penalties can go as high as $50,000 and up to a year in jail time in some instances. And civil penalties can get almost as high as the criminal penalties financially. So it's incredibly important that you know what take is and you avoid take as much as you possibly can so you can avoid these penalties. So before I introduce you to some of these listed and regulated species that we might encounter on the project, the first thing we need to go over is what your responsibilities are if you see one of these species. First and foremost, do not touch or approach the listed or regulated species. Can't stress that enough. Second thing on the list, if the species is in the immediate project area and is at risk of being injured or killed, you need to stop work immediately. What needs to happen then is you need to notify the designated biologist or the biological monitor. If one of us isn't there, if the monitor is not present, you need to contact Alluvian Biological Consulting directly. The phone number is in each of your books, and it's here on the presentation. The principal biologist on this project is Gennaro Lockhart. Only a qualified and permitted biologist can handle and move regulated species from the project site. This is a complete list of special status species that may occur on or near the project site. As you can see, there are quite a few of them. All of them carry some sort of state protection, and 2 of them carry federal protection to go along with their state protections. So now let's look at the listed and regulated species that may occur on or near the project site. Giant garter snakes, true to their name, are the largest species of garter snakes, with adults measuring 36 to 65 inches long. Individuals usually range in color from brown to olive to black, but all typically exhibit a dorsal yellow stripe that runs down the length of their body, as well as a lighter yellow stripe on each side of their body. Their underbelly is typically gray to brown in color, and this species is highly aquatic, preferring marshes, drainage canals, rice fields, and other wetland habitat to hunt and take refuge. They eat primarily fish, tadpoles, and frogs, and the breeding season for this species is approximately 2 months, usually between March and April. Females give birth to live young, which can be anywhere between 10 to 46 young per brood, and this usually takes place in July through September. Giant garter snakes go dormant during the winter season, usually using an animal burrow to take refuge until the following spring. American badger is a flat-bodied, short-legged mammal weighing up to 24 pounds. Its feet are equipped with webbed toes and 1.5-inch claws to aid in digging burrows. It bears silvery gray fur over most of its body, with black fur on its legs and a patterning of black and white fur across its face. This species is found throughout the state of California in habitats that provide pliable soil and shrub-like vegetation. Badgers are nocturnal, taking refuge in burrows for the majority of the day, and they frequently repurpose abandoned burrows for shelter. This species is carnivorous, feeding on a variety of rodents throughout the year, and females give birth to litters of 2 to 3 pups. Western burrowing owl is a small, brown, mottled owl that stands about 7 to 9 inches in height. True to its name, the burrowing owl nests in a hole in the ground. Although it's quite willing to dig its own burrow, it often uses one that's already provided by prairie dogs, skunks, ground squirrels, or other wildlife. Burrowing owls require habitat with open, well-drained terrain, short, sparse vegetation, and underground burrows. During the breeding season, they may also need enough permanent cover and taller vegetation within their foraging range to provide them with sufficient prey. Because of this, burrowing owls can occupy a wide range of habitats, including grasslands, agricultural areas, urban vacant lots, as well as the margins of airports. Breeding in California can start as early as January and continue through September. The peak of breeding is in April. Burrowing owls can lay anywhere between 1 to 11 eggs. The young hatch in about 30 days and fledge after 45 days. They will remain at the burrow for some time, foraging at night with the adults, until they're ready to fledge on their own. Swainson's hawk is a medium to large-sized hawk with adults getting up to 21 inches in length with 52-inch wingspans. Their plumage is variable, and there are usually 2 color morphs. The first morph is a light phase, which have dark heads, breast bands, and light bellies, while the dark phase birds are going to be sooty black. Both color phases have bicolored underwings, dark gray flight feathers, lighter wing linings, a broad tail, and long, relatively narrow pointed wings. In March and April, they arrive on breeding grounds in the Solano and Central Valley counties, as well as the interior valleys of the coastal ranges. Breeding habitat includes woodlands, savanna, grasslands, and scattered trees. Swainson's hawk require large tracts of grassland and open land for which to forage. During migration and foraging, they use open lowlands, and these hawks typically occur at elevations from sea level to 1,500 feet. White-tailed kite is a medium-sized raptor, 13 to 15 inches in length, with a long white tail, a gray back, and white facial feathers. Adults have red eyes, while juveniles have yellow eyes, and all individuals have a distinctive black spot beneath each wing wrist, in addition to a sharply hooked beak. White-tailed kites may inhabit a wide range of habitats, including savanna, marshes, cultivated lands, desert, and woodlands. This species feeds almost exclusively on small mammals, and in California, white-tailed kites are commonly associated with agricultural lands. They frequently nest on the tops of trees in stands adjacent to open foraging area. Mating takes place from February to October, and clutch size typically ranges from 4 to 5 eggs. With an incubation period of 28 to 32 days, chicks usually fledge after about 38 days. This section applies to all of the bird species that has been previously covered and any other species covered under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, or California Department of Fish and Wildlife Fish and Game Code 3503. A variety of bird species have been found nesting in or immediately adjacent to Caltrans right-of-ways. Nest sites are often placed in crevices, cavities, seams, or weep holes within bridges. Other nests are constructed on open vertical cement surfaces on bridges. The species that utilize man-made structures as nest sites tend to be more tolerant of urban conditions. These conditions might be increased noise, light, vibration, or simply human presence. But they can nonetheless be sufficiently disturbed during construction or maintenance activities enough to cause nest abandonment or inattentiveness, which would result in the death or loss of eggs or juveniles. Incubation and brood rearing require approximately 4 to 5 weeks for smaller birds, but can take up to 12 weeks for larger raptors. And this is why it's incredibly important that we get nest deterrents up on the project site and prevent nesting as soon and as often as possible. There are 6 regulated plant species associated with this project. Now, for the sake of time, we won't dive into too much detail for each individual species, but what you do need to know is that all of these species are found at the edges of wetlands or in grasslands near wetlands. So keep an eye out for short vegetation with lavender to purple flowers, and alert your biological monitor if you see any plants that resemble these 6 species. Please refer to your training materials for more detail on the regulated plants referenced here. So now we're going to go over some of the species protection measures for this project. This won't be an exhaustive list of all of the species protection measures for this project, but just a summary of some of the important points. A full list of the species protection measures for this project can be found in your Biological Resources Information Program booklet, so please reference your booklet for the rest of those measures. If a listed or regulated species shows up on or near the project site, we'll need to set up a protective radius for it. The radius is a no-work buffer that needs to remain in place until the animal leaves the area. And for this project, all regulated species carry a radius of 100 feet unless otherwise noted in this table. There are several general protective measures that need to be followed on this project, and I'll go over these quickly, but you should review these measures in your training materials. First of all, snake exclusion fencing needs to be installed along the outer edge of work as far south as possible from Lower Laguna Creek. Additionally, any staging of construction materials, portable equipment, vehicles, and supplies needs to be restricted to the designated construction staging areas. And these areas need to have reinforced temporary construction entrances and protected concrete washout facilities if necessary. On top of that, all staging areas need to be located a minimum of 43 feet from the nearest wetland. If you're driving a vehicle on an unpaved road near the project site, you need to follow a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit. This does not apply to paved roads with marked speed limits. It only applies to unpaved roads near or through the project. If it's feasible, any trees that are slated for removal need to be removed outside of the bird nesting season. Those dates range from September 1st through February 14th. And for this project, the nesting season for birds begins on February 15th and ends on August 31st. Best management practices need to be in place on the project site when and where appropriate in order to prevent sediment and other construction materials from washing outside the limits of the project and into a body of water. They should be in use throughout the project in any area that poses a risk of discharging pollutants. So we'll finish up here with some important takeaways from this presentation. First of all, back to the beginning, do not touch or approach any regulated species. Please notify your biological monitor if you see a regulated species on the project. And again, active bird nests are most likely to be found from February 15th to August 31st during the nesting season. It's incredibly important that you stay within the designated construction zone and you use the designated staging areas for this project. And please report all incidents to the biological monitor or your supervisor. Again, no hazardous waste, pollutants, or debris should be allowed to enter a water body, and this goes hand in hand with maintaining BMPs on the project site to prevent erosion and sediment loss. Lastly, and most importantly, you and your company are wholly responsible for following the measures that are stated in not only this biological resource information video, but the permits and specifications for this project. I appreciate you following along with this presentation. If you have any questions about what's been covered in this presentation, your training materials, the permits, project specifications, please direct them to your on-site alluvian biologist.